Welcome to T-Bone's Best of Roanoke show. Music, comedy, and conversation featuring HB, the Honey Badger.
Honey Badger don't care.
Now, on with the show.
I'm ready, T-Bone.
And are you ready, Kevin?
I am ready.
Oh, good. This is Radio Free Roanoke, and this is episode number 115, T-Bone's Best of Roanoke show. He's Kevin Devine. If you have lived in Roanoke since 2002 and stepped inside any property, I would say it's a good chance you've stepped into a property that Devine Building Services has put their fingerprints on. Kevin Devine founded Devine Building Services. Kevin, thank you for hosting us here at your home today. Tell us a little bit, just to give us a snapshot of what is, when I say Devine Building Services, what was that you founded?
Devine Building Services actually started out as Clean Investment 40 years ago as a commercial cleaning company in Baltimore, Maryland. I worked my way through high school and college as a janitor, and started Clean Investment 40 years ago with one building in Columbia, Maryland. And we grew from there into DC and Atlanta. We came to Roanoke, Virginia. One of our clients in Northern Virginia took a job here managing some Lewis Gale properties. And in 2002, asked if we would consider coming to Roanoke, and I asked, where is Roanoke? And here I sit. 20 years later, I'm here in Roanoke. We came here with one customer, and in 2013, we were nominated and received the Small Business of the Year award, managing facilities for approximately 3 million square feet.
Yeah. Well, I want to get into that here in just a minute because the reason we wanted to interview you, for me, you check a lot of boxes. One, you're a hard worker, and that's probably an understatement. Two, you're an entrepreneur. Based on what you've told me, it seems like whenever an opportunity came up, you started with, yes, I can do that.
That is correct.
And then you would figure out a way to do it. And then three, you give back to the community, you give back to your workers, you have a wonderful work culture and work motto. We want to get into all that. And to top it all off, Kevin, lo and behold, you were at Bob Hope's 80th birthday party. So we want to get into all that.
Yeah, it was, yes.
Not everybody in this room was there.
That is correct.
I want to get a feel for that. But you didn't start off in Roanoke. As a child, you grew up in what, South Philly?
Yeah, I grew up in South Philly. My dad was one of 13. My mom was one of 3. My parents met when they were in 8th grade, and I am one of 5 children. We lived in a row house. I shared a bed with 2 other brothers. There were 7 of us in the home with 1 bathroom, and we moved to Maine. My dad was the only one of the children to get out of South Philly. He dropped out of school in 8th grade to get a job to help support the family. When I was 11 years old, my father took a job with Michelin Tires, and they moved us to Portland, Maine. Mm-hmm. When I was in Maine, I went to, I got my own bed when I was 11.
Yeah, that's a big
So
deal.
what's this?
Yeah. When I was 11 years old, I got my own bed, and we had 1.5 bathrooms, and we actually had a counter, and the sink actually had a counter on it.
So Maine was like heaven.
Yeah, Maine was tremendous. That's where I really, really grew up. I learned how to ski, I learned how to ice skate, and I got my first real job there. Prior to getting my first job, I carried golf bags. I would get out there about 6:30 in the morning, and on a good day, we'd get out twice. The summers were kind of short in Maine, just because it was cold a lot, but it was a great place to grow up as a child. I got my first real job there working for Kibbe Cleaning Service. I worked through high school there, and I ran track and cross country. I was blessed to go to an all boys high school. I was a pretty good runner. It got me into college, where
Loyola, right?
I went to Loyola in Baltimore. Most of my education was paid for, but if I wanted to have any fun at all, I had to get a job. The only thing I really knew how to do was clean, so I got a job working for a large janitorial company. But while at Loyola, I got an excellent education. And after coming from an all-boys school and running into pretty women, that kind of my grades didn't do quite as well as they did in high school. There was a distraction there, a really good distraction, by the way.
And after you got out of college, you started working there in the Maryland area, and then from there, that was probably about 80, 82?
Yeah, it was 1982, February 23rd. Is when I actually got incorporated. The very first company, as I said, was called Clean Investment. The Rouse Company, and Jim Rouse, they gave me my very first building. I did cleaning for a large company who had the contract for a lot of the Rouse buildings. And it was the Rouse Company that gave me my first building. To get incorporated in the state of Maryland at that time, you had to have 3 officers of the corporation. And my grandfather was my vice president, my father was the secretary, and I was the president and the treasurer of the company.
Family affair.
Family affair. We had our first corporate meeting in my parents' dining room, and the legal documents were drawn up, and I was to purchase 1,000 shares at $1 a share. I showed up and I only had $500, so we had to draw a line through that, and I had to initial it. So I bought 500 shares of Clean Investment. Within 2 years of starting the business, we had 23 of Mr. Rouse's buildings, and at that time, the Rouse Company started writing letters of recommendation for us.
Boom. So just things took off, and then, like you said before, you parlayed all that success and hard work into coming to Roanoke. Now, once you looked at a map and said, oh, that's where Roanoke is, what did you think of Roanoke when you first got here?
My very first meeting here was in July of 2002, and it was to clean some of the Lewis Gale properties, not the hospital itself, but the outlying properties. And I drove around Roanoke and thought, what a great place to live. At that time, our offices were in DC and in Atlanta, and the traffic in both of those places was absolutely horrible. And I could pretty much walk to every building in this area the same amount of time as I could drive to other buildings in the other markets. And I fell in love with Roanoke. And I decided then that I was going to move here.
Make your stand here.
And I, at the time, was living in Lawrenceville, Georgia, on 8 acres. And when I moved to Roanoke, I decided I was never going to mow the lawn again. And I moved downtown Roanoke, and I think at the time there was maybe 30 people living downtown, and I have seen Roanoke grow from about 30 people to now I think there's about 1,800 people. It has become a neighborhood. Tim, as you have seen it grow as well.
Well, you're definitely a man about town. There's no doubt about that. And one thing you're known for, especially during your heyday with Devine Building Services, you always wore a suit. Tell us a little bit about what your thinking was there. You were known for that.
I did. I wore a suit, and that's a promise I made to a gentleman 38, well, now it's 40 years ago, but it's a promise I made when I got my first contract. I was, Mr. Rouse, he and I had a conversation, and he explained to me just how important janitorial business was. He explained that he had three expenses in owning such large properties. He had taxes, he had utilities, and then he had janitorial. And he couldn't change the tax code. He could not change the electric company. He couldn't call up Baltimore Gas and Electric and say he's bringing in Joe's Electric Company, but he could call up his janitorial company and tell them to get out tomorrow. And he suggested that I put a suit on during the day, go out and build up my business, and take the suit off at night and go out and work with our staff. And our philosophy from day one has always been that nobody works for us, everybody works with us. And I considered every individual that Devine Building Services has employed over the years as a business partner. And when we sign a contract with our clients, to me, that's a promise. We're going to deliver on a promise. We're going to deliver services that they'll be proud of. Over the years, if you signed a contract with Devine Building Services, it's a promise that we're going to deliver on.
Right.
And that has been our success, and the fact that everyone works with us.
Absolutely. Like any good leader, you don't ask your staff to do anything you wouldn't do.
Absolutely. And I have been, some of the people that I've been privileged to work with, some of them now, their children work within our organization. And I have been on emergency call lists at the schools for some of the children that work with our organization. I have been on the list to take their children to the doctor visits because the parents are hardworking, and they may have other jobs that they can't get off of work with.
Right.
So I'll take their children to the doctors.
Now, as far as properties go, Kevin, there's over 100 that you guys managed at one time. Tell us some of the big ones, or maybe some of the little ones, or any unique things about those. Because I'm sure they're all over the place.
Yeah, well, up in D.C., we had the Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, which is the largest church physical facility in North and South America. It's the 7th largest church in the world. And I served on their executive committee for 15 years. We had 13 employees in the church 365 days a year. And that's the property that we cleaned. That allowed me to go to Bob Hope's 80th birthday.
Okay. So you're name dropping Bob again. Okay.
Yeah,
let's flesh that out a little bit.
Yeah, I was on their executive committee, and Bob Hope, he and his wife Dolores, they had made a nice contribution to the shrine, and they dedicated the Hope Chapel, which is a chapel within the shrine. They dedicated that on Bob Hope's 80th birthday, and they had his birthday party at the Vatican Embassy in Washington, D.C., and they had a receiving line, and they had a gentleman there that would kind of give Bob a heads up as to who was coming through the line. And when my wife and I were walking through the line, the gentleman told Bob that it was Kevin and Tara Devine. And when we walked away, Bob turned to the gentleman and said, "Now who are they?" And the gentleman said, "Oh, he cleans the shrine." So again, I was introduced pretty much as the janitor. And over the years, and today, I still introduce myself as the janitor. But as we evolved over the years also, we started a painting division, and we've done that at the request. We started that about 15 years ago. We were cleaning, refinishing floors for Carillion in one of their buildings, and they asked why we had everything out of the floors. Could we possibly paint the walls? And I said yes. And then I had to go out and find some painters. And
that to me, you mentioned the painting service, and I think you provide a protection service, but both of those opportunities they were in front of you, and it's not something that you had, but like I said, you started it, yes, and you figured out a way to get both of those services to enhance what you were doing already. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. My one son said to me one day, he said, "Dad," he said, "when people ask you to do things, you never say no." Mm-hmm. And I explained to my son, I said, "The reason I do that is because when we say no, our clients are going to pick up the phone and call someone else. And we don't want that to ever happen. And if it's something that we can't do, we can help our customers find someone that can do it, or we can help them do it."
Yes.
And we got into the unarmed guard business because of Center in the Square. Jim Sears, who was their executive director, called me on a Friday night, and I met him down at the History Museum. And he said, "Kevin, why don't you start a guard service?" And he did that because we're good at what we do. We're customer service. Mm-hmm. The businesses that we're in, it's a service industry, and if we can provide better service than anyone else, that's what we're going to do.
And he knew what he was getting.
Yeah, he knew what he was getting.
That's exactly right. Now you mentioned other properties and calling somebody else, but tell us that story. You made a cold call to the Salem Red Sox, and you've got their contract.
Yeah, the Salem Red Sox. We've been in there. This is our 8th year there, and we wound up with the Salem Red Sox. I went in. It was a cold call. And I had the pleasure of meeting a gentleman, Alan Lawrence, who's now their general manager. And Alan had a banner behind his desk that said, "How can you save us money?" And Alan excused himself when I sat down in his office, and I think he did it intentionally so I would read that sign. And when he excused himself, of course, my mind started thinking, how can I save him money? And quickly I came up with that we would get all the trash out at night because it's all food trash, and then we would come back in the morning when the sun came up and clean the seats and the suites and the restrooms, and actually do the cleaning during the day so they could turn their lights off at night, and saving them the money that turning all the lights off at night would save them a lot of money.
Wow,
nice.
And we saved them, I don't even know what that number is, but just turning the lights off at night saved them a lot of money. And the Salem Red Sox have been a great client ever since. And I get to go to Boston and watch a great baseball game.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's my favorite team. So
Yeah.
I would love that.
Well, let's before we move on to Blue Ridge Literacy, at the height of your services to properties here in Roanoke, was it over 100, and how many employees did you have?
We had several hundred employees. Probably 100 of those were direct employees, and we had some that we would sub some work out to subcontractors. And we would manage the subcontractors.
And then as
We
far as
had
properties?
work up at Virginia Tech. We did a lot of work with the Virginia Tech Foundation. Dr. Dooley, who was the director, and I'm hoping I'm saying that right. I might have to do some research on that.
Yeah, that's all right.
Dr. Dooley, over the years, he became a fan of Devine Building Services as well, and I have great respect for him. But Virginia Tech was a great client as well. Walled Vocal Commercial Properties. It took me years to get in with Walled Vocal, but once I was in Michael Walled Vocal, that's a decision that I don't think he will ever regret, and I know he will.
Wow.
I know he won't.
You know,
Yes.
that's right.
We received the Small Business of the Year award in the business category in 2013, and I was told that once you're nominated, it takes about 2 or 3 years before you ever get the award. And the first year we were nominated, I got a phone call from someone on the committee, and they just said, make sure everyone that's important in your life is at the dinner. And that was at the Hotel Roanoke. And I said, does that mean that we won the award? And he said, I can't tell you won it, but just have everyone that's important in your life there. So
Okay.
I was blessed to be able to have my father there, my mother and father there.
Fantastic.
And my brothers and sister were there, and it was a big day for me. A lot of hard work, and it wasn't Kevin Devine or just Devine Building Services. It was everyone that has worked with us over the years. We've been blessed.
Yeah.
Well, you've been a blessing to our community, and speaking of that, you're on the board of the directors, right, of Blue Ridge?
I was on the board of directors of Blue Ridge Literacy for probably 8 years, and I served as their chairman of the board for 2 years.
Well, tell us a little bit about that, what you did there.
Blue Ridge Literacy that was one of my greatest blessings. It truly was a It truly
It's
was
probably Bob Hope calling.
Yeah, Bob Hope calling on. I should silence this. It truly was a privilege to be associated with Blue Ridge Literacy, and what Blue Ridge Literacy does is they work with refugees and immigrants that move to the Roanoke area, and we teach them how to read and write English, so that they can become members of the community, active members of the community. And also, Blue Ridge Literacy helps them become U.S. citizens. Prior to COVID, Blue Ridge Literacy would have anywhere between 60 and 70 people a year that they take through the program to become U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
And to see how they can become viable members of the community is amazing to see. And Roanoke is such a welcoming community.
Yes, it is.
When I first came to Roanoke, and just to see the development of Roanoke, I was at a dinner with Nancy Agee was the speaker, and to see what Carilion has done to Roanoke, and I think a lot of the growth is because of Carilion and Virginia Tech. The research that's coming here and the medical community is why Roanoke is becoming what it is today.
Okay.
So the future, you think, is solid?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There is, we have buildings downtown. Some of the buildings that are residential downtown, some of the bigger buildings are neighborhoods within themselves. We have right across the street the Ponce de Leon building. I think there's about 80 apartments in there, and that building in itself is a neighborhood. The block that I live on is a neighborhood, and you have amazing restaurants. I can walk out my front door, and if I turn left or right,
You've got
I have a decision to make. Depending on what I feel like eating. But it's just such a welcoming community. And I like it when I walk downtown, and I can kind of tell when there's a visitor in town. They have their phone out and they're looking to see
Yes.
where they want to go. And I make it a point to stop and ask them, is there anything I can help you with? Are you looking for something? And if I see that they're with children, I'll certainly recommend the center in the square or the transportation museum. Elmwood Park, what they have done there. When I first came to Roanoke, Elmwood Park had it was almost like a temporary stage that they had set up.
Right.
And now it's a permanent structure, and they have entertainment twice a week there most of the time in the summertime. That in itself draws the community together. And it's not just downtown that Elmwood Park is bringing in. It's bringing in people from every surrounding community. Every neighborhood in Roanoke comes to Elmwood Park for something several times a year. And one of the most spectacular views is Center in the Square. You go to the roof of Center in the Square.
Yes.
I take people there all the time. Some from Roanoke that have no idea that they can even go up there. And
It's like an unknown treasure up there.
absolutely. And then some of the other great views of downtown Roanoke. Some of these parking lots downtown.
Yeah.
You go to the top of the parking lots, and the views there are incredible.
Yeah.
Well, as we get ready to wrap it up here, Kevin, let's look at it this way. If I walk downtown, I'm probably looking for a place to eat. But if you walk downtown, what's as a pro, and based on your experience, you look for something maybe a little bit different at first.
I love the city market on weekends. I like to people watch. So when I go downtown and I'm walking around, if I'm not working, I'm people watching. I like to look for visitors. I like to look for the local people. But so if I'm not working and I'm not eating, I'm people watching.
Okay.
And this morning you mentioned you took a walk before we got here, and I said, "Well, how'd the city look?" You said, "Look clean."
It looked clean. That's what, yeah, I look for
That's
for
what you're going
cleanliness.
Yeah.
I definitely look for cleanliness.
Well, we're so proud to have you here in Roanoke. Is there anything else we want to highlight, you want to bring up before we shut it down?
Keep coming back to Roanoke. If you're visiting, come back, and if you live here, enjoy every day here.
Yes, sir.
Enjoy the mountains.
Yeah.
You know, I'm blessed to have a view of the mountains that is amazing.
Yeah.
It's all around us, isn't it?
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
All right, my friend. Keep it going.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Kevin.
Tim and Mike.
Thank you.
Greatly
Yes, thank
appreciate it.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A child arrived just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay. He learned to walk while I was away, and he was talking for I knew it. And as he grew, he'd say, "I'm gonna be like you, Dad. You know I'm gonna be like you." And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. You know we'll have a good time then.
Thanks, JT.